LIR.com, 927LIR.com, and YouTube. I am John Kalaboukas, the Bouk, with my friend Paul Zubulake, Nostradamus Zoobie, because I'm going to call you Nostradamus this week, because if anyone listened, which quite a few people listened to the show last week, Mr. Paul Zubulake, aka Zoobie, called that game probably the most perfect call when it came to a Super Bowl I've ever heard, because as I was watching it, I'm like, oh my God, my good friend just totally got this one right.
Well, and thanks for everybody who watched last week. And of course, thanks to our great friend, Lieutenant Dan Lettuce, who put on another show. And we had a great time with Dan. I have a feeling we might be seeing him more on the Bouk and Zoobie show, hopefully. And hopefully people did check out last week's show and are watching this week, John. So I really wanted to thank everybody. And that's really what it's all about, because we, as we always joke, right, John, we
Yeah.
are a word of mouth show. So hopefully people can continue to tell other people, and we can continue to increase our audience. So, yeah, thanks for that. But I have to tell you, John, if I said that the Eagles were going to blow out the Kansas City Chiefs, then I think I would have been the perfect call. So, I just went with the four-man rush. Can they get pressure on Mahomes? That was so for people who are watching this week who didn't watch last week's show. I said that was the key to the game. Could they get to Mahomes without blitzing? I don't think they blitzed one time,
Not
John.
one time. Not one time.
So the famous Vic Fangio, also known on the Bouk and Zuby show as Vince Ferragamo, uh, was actually the MVP. And of course, coaches can't be MVP. So I was actually a little disappointed, John. I thought it was perfect time to have a defensive player get the award, and I thought Josh Sweat was the guy to get it.
Yeah.
Nothing against Hurts; he played great too, but I mean, it was all about the defense.
Yeah, I mean, it totally overwhelmed um, Mahomes. The one thing that I made the mistake last week, I made the mistake. Of course, I was happy the Eagles won because that's who I was rooting for. But what I didn't take into account, I think many people didn't, is what if the Chiefs make mistakes? We kept saying about another team making mistakes that would cost them. And I was just totally off on this. It was pretty funny. Lieutenant Dan texted me and said, Book, you were right the other way when I said it was going to be more than a touchdown score. So,
Hey, it
oh well.
happens, John. It's okay. And like I said, if I had picked a blowout, I would have been the total genius. But I'll take it. Thanks again. And just a great performance by the Eagles, top to bottom, all phases. Another big key, and I had mentioned it as well, was the secondary of the Eagles going up against the Kansas City offense and their receivers. And Cooper DeJean, John, that to me was the game, right? When
Yes.
he picked that off, and not only he ran it in on top of it,
Yeah.
and it really at that point I was like, wow, they are in huge trouble. And it's funny because we both said this. I guess our wives both said this, right? We talked about this offline. Is that they said, "Oh, Kansas City, they always come back," and we both had the same answer for them, saying that when it comes to protecting the quarterback, John, once you can't do it, there's no turning it around.
And, and it throws you off your game because here he is. I mean, he just looked pathetic. He really did. I mean, he had
I
nowhere to
know.
go. Even when he tried to get out of the pocket, and sometimes they had him. I mean, it was just a perfect game plan that stifled that entire offense. And the worst thing of all is you had sure-handed guys dropping passes too. That didn't
Yeah,
help
that
them.
Hopkins drop was huge. That was
Yeah.
kind of like their last chance when he like basically tripped over himself and couldn't make the play. But they were relying on guys that, a little past, a little getting long in the tooth. But like you said, nobody's feeling sorry for the Chiefs. The overreaction on the downside, because it was one of the worst performances from a QBR rating from Mahomes. But I mean, to everybody get a little bit over the top about how disaster it is for the Chiefs. My God, we as Jet fans, John, we wish we had a season like that.
That's right.
Right? I would take a blowout in the Super Bowl, I think, if I could actually get there. Not to mention, of course, them winning three. So yeah, it was just obviously a tough day all around for everybody. I think one thing did surprise me is that they just abandoned the running game.
Yeah.
And they should have gotten Xavier Worthy the ball through a reverse or something early. They didn't really run any of their patented misdirection stuff. But also, the defense couldn't stop the Eagles. So
Yeah.
kudos to them. And let's face it, John, the game does start out with the NFL's worst nightmare with a basic, very ticky tack call
Yeah.
on Brown on a
Yeah.
big completion down the sideline where everybody was screaming and yelling. But luckily, there was a little bit of a makeup call where they basically evened it out. And then after that, John, it didn't matter. It was so one sided. So the officials were able to slide by without any controversy.
And you didn't see anything from Kelsey, which meant we only saw his girlfriend one time during the Super Bowl, which was great. But I think what was even worse than the game was uh, just the performance, at halftime was just awful. I think what was even worse than that were all the commercials. I have never seen worse commercials. I mean, you talk about advertisers spending millions and millions of dollars, and then you have to figure out what product was that? What were they just? I mean, I think really one of the worst was the Dunkin' Donuts one where they had Bill Belichick and his 24-year-old girlfriend. Why he was in that commercial, I have no idea, except maybe because he was, with the Patriots. But you had no idea what the hell they were talking about. What were they talking about with that commercial? I
John,
mean,
I'm the wrong guy to talk to about this stuff
oh, it was
because I
awful.
honestly don't. I wasn't paying attention to
It
the
was awful.
commercials. I do have a comment on the halftime, and my view on the halftime, John, is that in the inner city on Super Bowl Sunday, there was kids that were watching this game and they were so happy to see a guy like Kendrick Lamar perform at the Super Bowl. So I actually
Probably,
took it that way, where
probably,
I was
probably.
actually kind of happy for those kids who were able to see it. Now, this is talk about it. It's a rabbit hole. You can go down there, forget it, never come back, right? But I actually had a little different view on it, and I don't think it's a big deal, and
No,
to
no,
make it
no,
it
it
went
was,
over the top, obviously the
yeah,
meaning
no,
and all that
it wasn't
allegedly,
even
but
that. Yeah, it wasn't even that. I just, my thing is that can they get any better performers? Like, I mean, you used to have Michael Jackson, Prince. I mean, you talk real top performers. I don't feel like that the Super Bowl is really getting top performers anymore during halftime. You would think that they would. As far as I'm concerned, and not that I know about Kendrick Lamar, but I don't think he is at the top of his game anymore, from what I understand.
I don't know anything about. I mean, I'm not going to even comment on the hip hop space, John. So I think there's definitely a generational issue when it comes to this stuff. I just personally don't get too bent out of shape about it. My view is, if you don't like it, you shut it
Oh,
off. That's
yeah,
it. You don't
yeah.
like it, you shut it off. Anyway, let's.
Anyway, but
It's so funny.
overall, the whole night was
Well, just
awful.
yeah, it was awful. And
It
and
was
we talked
awful.
about we wanted to see a good game. Ultimately, that's all we really cared
Right.
about was
That's
seeing
right.
a good game. Of course, you want to see your prediction come true. So like I said, I'll take it. Didn't make any money off of it. Didn't lose any money off of
Hmm.
it. I did hear there, and I won't mention who. I should probably. And Lieutenant Dan lost some money. because of, I guess, the late 2-point conversion at the end of the
Oh,
game changed obviously the final
oh
score to
wow. Oh
0-2.
wow.
So, and that's the funniest part about the game is that I have to admit I wasn't paying attention to the end of the game. So it was garbage touchdowns, and I wasn't even watching at that point. So
I was done
they
after 31 nothing.
so it was, yeah, there was just no, basically it was all about, there was two things right before the half, right, when Hopkins dropped the ball, and then the first drive of the second half where they
Yeah,
got the ball. They
yeah.
had to do something, and you could just see the pressure was still on. And they just, the front four, they just did a great job. They rotated everybody, but Sweat stood out. Jalen Carter was tremendous on the inside. And I mentioned Williams. I still can't get his name. And the funny thing is, John, he's a free agent. Their other defensive tackle, Williams. And they showed the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles list of free agents, John. Many quality players, John, who had big games on that list. Zach Bond, who had the big
Hmm.
interception. Our buddy Mekhi Becton's on that list. Justin Reed from the Chiefs is on that list. The guy Williams I just mentioned is on that
Hmm.
list. So I'm not saying we maybe should get to the locals, because if I'm a local organization, and this is going to fit the Giants probably a lot more than the other team, which we'll get to, that the Giants have to really make a marketable improvement with their squad this year, or their coach and GM or history. They should be rating those rosters, John. I don't think there's any doubt about it. There's multiple quality players that are available. And that's what happens in the NFL. You can't pay everybody. Oh, yeah, Trey Smith, an offensive lineman for the Chiefs, is the
Hmm.
guard. He's
Hmm.
also on that list. Now, there'll be guys who will resign. There'll be guys who get franchised. So it's not like they're all going to be available, but a lot of them are. And that's how any smart franchise is going to take advantage of that.
Yeah. And this is the time to do it. I mean, you're right. They really should be looking at these rosters, especially because, what's amazing in the NFL is there's just so many. It's the only league really that when they mention all these salaries, that a lot of it's not guaranteed. That's why these guys are getting all the money up front, because it's
Right.
non-guaranteed unless, like I said, unless
Partial, yeah,
someone
they're partial guarantees. They
partial,
get a
partial,
partial. A lot of
partial,
them
but
are like dressed
it's
up
not a
deals, right?
it's not a full
No,
guarantee.
right. You see,
So
yeah,
that's why you
exactly.
have so many free agents and so many people out there. So listen, there's many teams that I could think of that could use those players. I mean, it, like we talked about earlier, uh, maybe about 3 episodes ago, how top heavy it was this year. There wasn't, we always talk about parity and parity. There really wasn't any parity this year.
No, there's a lot of bad teams, a
Yeah,
lot of bad teams.
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think the league, it was a good, very good season. They obviously, the big game was a disappointment. The playoffs were good. The league itself, as we've been really beating them up on a week to week basis, they really have to get their act together in the offseason, and get their rule book aligned to what the heck is going on, and explain to the fans what the rules are with these is stupid replay stuff, where it's, there's an assist, but in only certain situations. And if guys are running up to the line of scrimmage, is the replay assist person going to be fast enough? There are a lot of issues, John. And another thing too, I mean, I know it's such a bad game because it's just, but the dynamic kickoff, even though it led to more returns, it could have been so much better.
yeah,
And it was a non-factor in the Super Bowl.
yeah.
So they need to make it punitive on touchbacks. And we talked about this too. And I want to move it to the 40, because I'm telling you, if that touchback is at the 40 instead of the 30, teams are not going to kick it through the end zone. They're going to force returns,
That's
and
right.
then that's how you get the return back. I hope they do something, at least get to the 35. They have to adjust that rule. And here's another one, John, I didn't even know about. Let's see if I mean, you probably didn't catch it because you were out of it. Um, you cannot attempt an onside
Yeah,
kick
right.
before the fourth quarter.
Yep. I
Even if
didn't
you
know that.
tell them that you're going to do that. Like, what is that? That makes
Right.
absolutely no sense. You
Yeah, you
should
have to
be,
tell
if
the
you
other team
want,
you're gonna. Right.
do
You
it.
have to tell the
No,
other team you're gonna do it.
that's okay. That's okay. But you can't even do that in the
I know.
third quarter. You can't even tell the other team. It's ineligible play. I
Yep.
never knew that. So what happens if you're down by 4 touchdowns in the third quarter? Then you score a touchdown with like a minute to go in the third quarter. You can't kick an onside kick down 3 touchdowns.
I heard that. Yeah.
John,
No, I heard that. I
where
was
do they
stunned.
come up with this stuff? Like when they get in the room and they have this like these loopholes, and it's just like that's so funny. I didn't even know that was that was part of the
And
rule.
it's funny. I watched an interview with Herm Edwards, and what was really interesting. So they were going through some of this, and the host said, uh, that there's a proposal on the table to add another game to make it an 18 game
No, of
season.
course, yeah.
And what did Herm Edwards say? What difference does it make? He goes, just take away a preseason game. It's the same thing. He says they're going to do it. Right away, Herm Edwards says they're going to do it.
Well,
More
they have
money.
to collect. Yeah, they have to collective bargain it. Yeah, the players have to accept it. That's a rough one to take, and that gets the Super Bowl back to President's weekend for the Monday off after. So half the country doesn't have to call in sick. But the funny thing is, a good friend of mine pointed this out, John, that I did not know that, and it's actually 2026. If they don't get to 18 games, the Super Bowl, because of the way the calendar is, will actually take place. It's going to be the latest Super Bowl in history. It's like February 12th.
Wow.
And the 12th or the 13th, and the following Monday will be President's Day. So in
Wow.
2026, folks,
Wow.
you will have a day off after the Super Bowl unless, of course, they collect a bargain and get it out to 18 games. Their contract's not up, so I don't see it happening for a while. I mean, obviously, there's more international games. The Jets have a home game next year in London. They're adding, what was it? Ireland's getting a game, and I think Berlin's getting a
Yeah,
game.
Germany. Yeah. Yeah.
So the NFL doesn't care what they're. I mean, they could care less what the home fans think. Jet fans, will have one less game, I guess, to pay for, which might be a perfect move because there's not much to talk about on the Super Bowl anymore, right? There's not much more to be said, I should
It's
say.
nothing more.
And it's time to get to what's happening in Florham Park. But before that, quickly, I just want to again thank everybody for checking out the show. YouTube.com, Spotify.com, the world famous LIR.com website, 927LIR.com, our wonderful friends over there, spinning the tunes still on internet radio. We really appreciate being on their platform and the others. Please like episodes, subscribe, drives the algo like we're talking about. It's part of the deal for a word of mouth show. So anyway, I wanted to get that out of the way, John. So yeah, let's get to the absolute huge news. Which again, I hate John. If you were listening to this show the last few weeks, it was already out there that the Jets had no interest in bringing Rodgers back. I thought it made no sense to bring him back. It's nothing about my fandom. Of course, you want him back because we're old and it's another rebuild, which we've talked about ad nauseum that we weren't going to sit through. But, John, like I said, right when it all came down, more of the same with Captain Chaos and Woody Johnson and the New York Jets.
And it's an unofficial announcement, but we know it's going to become official. And
Yes.
what came out today is that Rodgers was given, when he had a meeting with Glenn and Muji, some
Or
people still
Moogie.
think, or
Or
Mugi,
Muget. Yeah, Moogie.
Muge, that they gave him an ultimatum that he needed to attend all the training sessions and no more McAfee.
Right.
If
No
he,
more Mac. Right.
if he wasn't willing to accept that, then they didn't want him. Listen, they don't want the drama that comes along with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he comes with a lot of baggage, and clearly, again, they're going to wait to make this announcement. And the transaction will take place clearly after June 1st because then, the cap hit, they can spread out over 2 years. So the Jets are actually going to save a lot of money this
Well,
year by doing it.
right, a lot of it's all cap space, but
Cap space.
sometimes it could also go the other way where they take the complete hit this year. Because John, this team is like, as we've also talked about, this roster is not in good shape. So quickly, I'm going to go through it right now. Quarterback need. All right, we don't need running backs. That's the one thing we don't need a running back. We need a tight end. We need our offensive line. We need a right tackle. And this is not talking about depth, folks. This is just the starters. We need a right tackle, as mentioned, tight end, with Adams 99% following Rodgers out the door. That's happening.
Yep.
They need at two receivers, easy. That's on offense, folks. Defense, they need a defensive tackle to start at next to Quinn and Williams. You can argue they needed a defensive end. I mean, Johnson's coming back. Jermaine Johnson's coming back. That's great news. I think Will McDonald is a pass rush specialist. He's not an every down player.
Mm-hmm.
They can
Mm-hmm.
improve there. Michael Clemens stinks. Linebacker, CJ Mosley's gone. He's going to be gone.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah,
cap casualty.
yeah.
Sherwood's probably leaving. They got Quincy Williams, so they need linebacker help. Guess what? DJ Reed, right corner, starter, gone. Brandon Eccles, his backup, gone. They need a right corner. Guess what? Safeties, they need two. Start both. That's just the starters. That doesn't even talk about the depth. Not to mention they need a kicker again, and their punter is like 42 years old. So this franchise, John, as we have stated, is going to be in another 3 to 5 year slog of rebuild with a inexperienced GM and an inexperienced head coach who was a defensive coordinator, just like we said. Now, it's quite amazing, John, that there was this huge part of the fan base, mostly the older crowd, was like honestly thinking that Rodgers was coming back and that this team was like going for it next year. Not even realizing that the roster has all these holes, not to mention Rodgers is kind of was a bit of a hole because let's face it, his better, he's long past his best. So
Yep. Yep.
this is unfortunately, as predicted, is going to be. This is what's going to happen, John. And Aaron Glenn and Darren Moogie are probably most likely going to end up just like the last four or five of them. I'm sorry. It just lines up perfect. And Captain Chaos is going to be in the middle of it, and God knows what's going to be coming out of his mouth. And his kid's only going to get more power as the years pass. And this franchise is just in an absolute spiral of just it's I don't know how much lower it can go.
I was speaking to my godson last night, and the Jets came up because, unfortunately, he is a Jets fan and an Islander fan, and he goes to me, I'm also his uncle, his godfather. I have a couple of roles, and he goes, "Do you think that the Jets are cursed?" That's all he said to me. He's only 18 years old. He's turning 18. I go, I have never seen them in the Super Bowl. I said, it's been 50 years. I've been a fan. I told him, since 1975, I have been a fan. I said, I have not seen them in the Super Bowl. And he
Yeah.
says to me, what can they do? And I said, I said, I don't know. I said, I have no idea what they can do at this
Uh,
point.
so just for fun, for the longtime Jet fans who are listening to us, when you look back at the history of this franchise, it is just you can't believe how bad it is. John, the most wins in franchise history, most wins in a season is 12, 1998. That's the only time they won 12. They have only won double digit wins consecutive seasons in the history of the franchise. twice. 1968, 1969, when John and I
That's
were
right.
not in diapers, but we don't remember. And 1985 and 86, believe
Yeah.
it or not, they
Yeah.
went 11-5, and then the infamous 10-6 year when they started 10-1. John, those are the only two consecutive years they have
Wow.
won double digits. Because in people be like, oh yeah, oh 09, 10. What are you, out of your mind? You're wrong. Guess what? In 09, they went 9-7
Yeah.
and got the charity of pass to get in the playoffs because the Colts laid down on the last week. So I mean, just put it. Does that put it in perspective?
It's awful.
12 wins one time, John, once. And I know obviously with 17, it's a little different, but they've never gone 13-3 ever. This is how bad it is. And again, no sustained success. Zero in the whole history of the franchise, including 68 and 69. Because I think the year after that, they had a bad season. It was kind of, I guess, Namath got hurt, and it was like it started a down spiral. They've had zero sustained success. And you and I, to this day, and we could, when did you become a fan? I think 10 years old is always legitimate to say. That's kind of a fandom start. Okay, you could say
11. Yeah,
8.
I was
Yeah,
11.
whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever I think that's kind of legit, unlike some people who think like, oh, I'm 65 and I've been a fan for 65 years. I mean, I don't count the cradle in the first 5 years. But I understand people want to make it more dramatic. But we're 50-year guys, right? We'll be nice. So just you could argue it's more 50 years, 50 years of pretty much being a hardcore fan. 50. How can we go on when it's just the same old story? There's just nothing. I don't know how anybody can have any confidence that it's going to turn out any other way, despite the ridiculous media in this town. It's not even the town; it's the national media who they could give a. Let's face it, they don't care about the Jets. They find it as like it's a comedy. And people like the ones who were breaking all these stories about the ultimatums and all this. I mean, they're so happy to get Rodgers one last time and to like say like, oh, Rodgers is not really, he doesn't want to be a Jet because he wants his McAfee show. The thing is with Rodgers is, like you mentioned, he doesn't want anybody telling him what he's doing off the field, right? And he probably was chuckling when that, like, why did, like, is that important, right? So it's just they didn't want him back anyway.
Right.
And if they're trying to
Right.
throw this narrative out there that it was, oh, Aaron was selfish and he didn't really want to come, because we had all these, we want to change the franchise because the vision of Aaron Glenn. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, you're just trying to take the pressure off yourselves because they're going to be bad next year. They're going to be bad. And we'll be talking about them still. And they'll talk, we'll talk about the quarterback potentials of who they're going to bring in because I don't think they're drafting at QB at 7. I mean, John, I'll end my Jet thought here. I'll give Muji some advice. I will be happy and I'll believe in you when you trade out of 7 and slide down if you can, because it's going to be hard to get dancing partners. There's a weird draft, not
Yeah.
a lot of great players, but a hell of a lot of good players. You got to trade down and you got to accumulate picks and you got to pick the right guys. And if he can pull that off, you can take a quarterback, John, if you trade down, right? You could trade. So then it's less of a risk because if you can make a little bit of a gamble if you have extra picks with a quarterback. So hopefully that will be my parting, comment on the Jets and what they should do. Because I'm not gonna, I don't care anymore, John. It's 50 years of absolute crap, and I'm sick of it.
And I'm going to give you an assignment.
No, if it's about the
No,
Jets,
no,
finish
no.
this.
Well, I'm sure I've reminded you about this several times, but now you're
Okay.
going to have to do it for me. Is watch the movie Draft Day. with Kevin Costner, because there's a part in there that you will appreciate with how he takes advantage of a rookie GM.
Okay.
So
All right. I will.
you have
Okay.
to
So if
watch
I
it.
can find it,
They
all
have
right.
some,
I'm sure.
they have some,
All
some
right,
drama
John. I will
nonsense
make a
in between,
commitment to. Yeah, okay.
but you'll
I will
like it.
check it out. Okay. I will check it out. Anyway, so that's my speech, the last one of 2025, or the beginning of 2025, of course, because the football season, believe it or not, will start again this calendar year. And hopefully the Bouk and Zoobie show will be talking about it. We may be taking some time off here and there, and maybe have some guest hosts, hopefully. So, and also we are talking about having a live stream around March Madness. So I don't know, John. I think that's, I don't, unless you have something else on the NFL, if you want to
I have
make
nothing.
our way into the other sports. And this is kind of becoming a mini tradition now after we do our NFL stuff. I put it over to you. What do you want to do out of the three winter sports? What do you want to take? What do you want to talk about?
Um, Actually, let's talk about, since you talked about March Madness, let's go to college basketball before we do the pro sports.
Okay, go for it.
So as of today, the Red Storm, or as I like to refer them as the Red Men, are now ranked number 9 in the
Number
country.
nine.
Number 9. They cracked the top 10 by beating Connecticut. And pretty, it was a typical St. John's game, which we know. But so they're going to be playing Villanova tomorrow night in Villanova. They have Crichton, which is ranked 24. They've moved up now.
Yeah,
So
they're
they're
on a
going to be playing
streak.
them on Sunday. You still have games against Butler, who in where's Butler? In Ohio somewhere? I don't know.
Indiana.
Indiana, thank you. Um, and then of course UConn, which you and I got to go. UConn is ranked 27 now. They fell out of the top 25. And
They
then
did. Yep. Yep.
and Marquette actually went down. We have to play at Marquette. They're ranked 18th. So a couple of tough games still going on. I think that they have. I really want to see how well they're going to do against Crichton on Sunday, because they didn't play very well when they played them away. So let's see what happens in the Garden. They're a pretty good team actually.
No, yeah, they got Ryan Colbrenner, the big seven
Yeah,
one kid.
yeah.
Yeah, he got off to a weird. They got off to a slow start, Creighton, and they were struggling. So yeah, no, big matchup. But I have to. I think that John, and it's a little early, but I like to make these longer term predictions sometimes too. I will say right now that St. John's will not be a Final Four team, will not be a Final Eight team. I think if they get to the Sweet 16, it's actually a very successful year. I think the Big East is just down this year, and
Mm,
they have a good team. I'm not knocking them. They have a good team. I like St. John's, but in a one and done style tournament, they have an ability to they throw that clunker in there, and especially when there's not going to be
yeah,
any home advantage, and you're going to play maybe in an arena that's not that crowded, and maybe somewhere else in the country. And that's why it's so important for them to somehow get in the East, right? Because we
yeah,
were talking about it, right? Providence is a location for the first two rounds, and then Newark, New Jersey is where the regionals are going to take place. So that would be a spectacular situation for them. So there you have a unbelievable incentive, because
sure.
obviously to get out, you got to get out of Providence to get to Newark in the final 16. So if they can get to the Sweet 16, they will actually be playing in advance. I think that's when they'll be playing in Newark, right? Unless yeah, that's when they'll be playing in Newark.
Yeah, that would
The
be fantastic.
16 down to 8, and then obviously the final four, which I'm not even, is it San Antonio? I'm not even
San
sure where it
Antonio.
is.
Yeah, it's
Is it
San
San
Antonio.
Antonio? Anyway, so yeah, no, good. I mean, you got to love the team. I love the team. I mean, how could I not love St. John's when they have Zuby Etchafor on the team? So, I mean, John, it's just too sweet for me. You're obviously so excited. They haven't been relevant in so long, right? I mean, it's really amazing,
Been
right?
a
When they're
long
thrown
time,
out,
quarter of a century.
right? So it's a great feeling to see what's going on at the Garden, and I'm psyched for that Connecticut game. But yeah, so I mean, around the country, it's the SEC is the basketball conference this year, John, and Florida beat Auburn this past week.
Yeah.
So they've got Tennessee and they've got Kentucky. So those teams that I'll tell you that conference tournament is going to be a war. I mean, the Mississippi State, and Mississippi are actually good this year. Um, that conference has not been this good in so long, and they are dominant. Now, when you get to the big dance, anything can happen. And it's going to be unfortunate, between the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the SEC, John. There's going to be like 35 teams, believe it or not, out of those three conferences in the tournament. That's how dominant these conferences are this year. And the Big East, it will be. They'll hold their own, right? Because they'll have Creighton, Connecticut, St. John's,
Marquette.
and Marquette. So I don't think anybody else is getting in, but that's still a good solid four, though.
Yeah, yeah, and they have uh, Patino is very much in favor of expanding the Big East. He's been very outspoken about it because he says that, why not have Duke and North Carolina, these teams go in with the Big East, make one big conference.
Well, it's the football. That's the problem, right? It's
Yeah,
always been a problem. So I think, to me, the one school that is just, and you could argue Boston College as well, but Boston College has never been that much of a traditional sports school, let's face it. But the fact that Syracuse is not in the Big East, John, they are lost in the ACC. Boeheim retired a couple of years ago. They
yeah,
are reeling, right? I mean, Duke beat them by like 40 or something. It was ridiculous. So that is, and again, it's the football is the problem, right? So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's a shame. I agree with what Patino's saying, but he's gonna, he needs to get like the smaller powerhouses, but there's not many, right? I mean, where are you going to go to get? I understand where he's talking about with Duke and Carolina, but they're not ever going to be available because they need the football. They need the football side.
Well, and one thing that St. John's has been sending a lot of emails about lately is after every victory, they're asking for donations to the athletic program. And that guy, I don't know how to pronounce his name correct, the vitamin water guy,
Rapoli, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Rapoli, is willing to match dollar for dollar up to $1 million. So
oh
if
yeah,
they get a
yeah.
million dollars worth of donations, he's gonna double it. So I'm like, and it's apt. It's almost like clockwork. They win, and if you want to keep your seats when we're I don't know what they're calling it,
Right.
redirecting everyone. Here's your chance to donate to the St. John's basketball. I'm like, wow.
Well, let's see how let get through the tournament. Like, maybe they get to the Final Four, Final Eight. I mean, that's talking big time. So let's see if they can get there. Then maybe people will pay. But it's part of the deal now, John. Right? It's just a different situation. And it's smaller, because they don't have the football side, bringing in revenue. It's hard for the basketball only teams to compete on the
Yeah,
financial side. So, I mean, Patino's doing the best he can. He's lucky he has Rapoli, right? Because
yeah,
he's a huge, and a lot of the schools have that. They have like one or two big donors that keep the programs afloat. So that's good. Hey, that's how it is, right? You gotta ask, right?
well, Rapoli had a falling out with the administration of St. John's a couple of years ago where he said he wasn't going to give $1 until they turned around the basketball program. And when Patino's name came up, he actually pushed it along with the president of St. John's. but he wasn't contributing for a while there. He was so disgusted with what was going on. He says, I'm not, and the other thing is that they weren't including him in any of the conversations. Meanwhile, he's the biggest donor.
Yeah.
Don't you think that you want this guy to be involved and, at least give the look of allowing him to give some input into the decisions? But
Well, that's the way it
now
works.
they got
That's
him
the way it works.
back.
Yeah.
They have him back because he's sitting right next to Patino
Right.
at the games. So
Well, we'll see if Patino's name pops up for some other jobs. I mean, he's not getting any younger, but he is tremendous as a coach. So it's going to be an interesting off season for the Johnnies if they do make a huge run. They still, I mean, it's funny if you go down I mean, Etchefor's back, right? He comes back, and Lewis can come back, right? I think a lot of,
yeah,
right? So it's just really obviously Richmond and Smith are gone,
right.
but Wilcher would be back, Glover, the freshman. So they have, as long as RJ comes back, they actually have some and Scott would be back too, right? I think he's
Yes,
back.
yes,
So
yes.
they do have guys coming back if they can keep them all. But so anyway, so it's just, hey, you got to be happy. It's at the bottom line,
Yeah. Listen,
keeping us going,
first
keeping
10
us
game
going.
winning streak since 84, 85.
Yeah, yeah, no, and they're just fun to watch though too. They play that relentless defensive style and
Yeah.
they go to the basket hard. It's not always pretty, right? I mean, they can definitely go through these stages.
Ugh.
And Richmond is just like he's like a mini Magic Johnson sometimes, right? When he gets on a roll and he gets downhill going to the hoop, he's got every move in the book around the basket, right? He's a cagey
But
guy,
one
right?
of the worst
He's got terrible
foul
form.
shooters. I mean, just his form
His form is bad. I
is
know.
just awful. I was like, I'm almost trying, at home now, I'm starting to do the thing. Come on, guy, just like a little bit like this. It keeps going in like a line drive all the time. I'm like, just come on a little bit. I'm not even a basketball. I can barely lift up my arm today, and I'm like, come on, just like this. Come on, man.
His form. He does not have good form. That's why he's not going to be an NBA player. He's just I just don't see it. He just cannot make a perimeter shot.
Oh,
But a
yeah,
tremendous, very good college player. But he'll have a
yeah,
long career in Europe. But maybe he'll prove me wrong. Who knows?
yeah.
All right, let's talk pro hoops, John. What
NBA. So as I
NBA? What
called
do you
it,
got?
I
Yes,
made a
yes.
call.
All
Okay,
right, what'd you call? What had? Remind me.
okay. So remember the Doncic trade,
Of course, yes.
and what did we call Mr. Davis? A broken down, always injured player. What happens in his first game?
He
He
goes
gets
down.
injured.
He
He's
had a
going to be out a
great
month.
game. Is he out a month?
He's going to be out a month now. He has
John,
like
that he had such a
an
good game.
abductor strain.
I'm sorry to laugh. And his numbers in that game were unbelievable, right? Didn't
He
he
was
have
doing
almost like a
great.
triple double?
He was doing great. And they show him and he's going, I'm here, making the muscle. And then in the third quarter, I don't know, he fell down like a lump of coal, and he's out, man. He's
A
out.
month. I didn't know that. Well,
One
good.
month.
Thanks for the update. Yeah, we are talking on Tuesday evening, the 11th. Happy Valentine's Day out there for all of the people. Just throw that in there, John, quickly. Yeah, all right. So that was, yeah, you're right. You definitely said that. Doncic did play last night. They actually threw Baylor Houston off of ESPN in the second half, deservedly so. But that's another story. I was kind of hysterical. They did that to show the debut of Luca. What I did, they did win, right? I honestly,
Yeah, they
how
won.
did he
They
do?
won. He played 27 minutes
Okay,
just to
but
break him in.
Was
But what
LeBron playing?
LeBron was playing.
Oh,
Yeah,
they both were playing. Okay.
yeah, yeah. And the one thing that came out this week is that the Mark Cuban tried to stop the trade, even though he's a minority owner. He only owns like 10% of the team. He tried to stop the trade, uh, but was told by the GM that the owner wanted him gone. And they have the owner, this guy Dumont or whatever they call him.
Hmm.
Uh,
He's
part
running
of
it for
the
Adelson, is what you're saying, right?
right.
Because Adelson owns the team, right?
Yeah, but Dumont is like, what is it, the son-in-law or whatever.
Okay, okay, I didn't know. Okay,
Um, and he was saying, uh, he, he was saying that he was out of shape, that lifestyle and all this other nonsense. And we know it all has to do with the money thing.
yeah, they weren't paying.
He was just trashing Doncic in a roundabout way. Not very good for the fans. And look, already they got excited for 3 quarters with this guy, less than 3 quarters, and now he's out a month.
That
Just
is incredible.
crazy.
Well,
And
yeah, no,
another
this,
thing
yeah.
that you know what was really weird is Mark Williams' trade to the Lakers. They rescinded that trade. The kid's 23 years old. They say, oh, he didn't pass his physical. How can you not pass your physical at 23 years old? I have a feeling they just had second thoughts about the trade. And they just decided, yeah, you know what? I'm sorry. Yeah, that's it. We don't want him.
Well,
So,
who were they trading in that? Remind me, who was the other side? Who was in
uh,
that trade?
I,
Okay, I
I
remember.
forgot the guy's name from the Lakers. It was,
It was a good player, right? He was good. He's
yeah,
good.
yes, he was. He was. Oh man, it just slipped my
All right,
mind. I'm
it's
sorry.
okay. I put you on the
But
spot.
it was
We're
he was
old.
a young player too. But they were getting a center back. But the, for some reason within the organization, it looks like they had second thoughts about the deal, so they rescinded that. But the trade of Ingram to the Raptors signed him right away to a 3-year, $120 million extension. So he's going to be part of, you know, with Quickly and Barrett there. I mean, they have a really young core there, but I thought that was pretty quick. 3 years, 120 million.
Oh, right.
Um,
Yeah, it was Dalton Connect. They were
that's
trading. Oh,
it.
yeah.
That's it. I was going to say
All right.
Dalton. Yeah, right.
Right.
Connect. Right.
All right. Yeah, that's because he had actually got off to a good start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So other than that, like I said, the Knicks haven't really played. They've had a long layoff, but they got killed, absolutely clobbered by the Celtics. And
Right.
of course, when we have to play the Celtics, we have injured players at the
Yeah.
time. Anunoby,
They can't win without him. They
yeah,
can't,
and
John. It just and the Knicks situation is they cannot lose Ananobi, they can't lose Brunson, and they can't lose Towns.
yeah,
And Josh. I mean, let's say Josh Hart too. You could add to that
yeah,
list. I mean, maybe
yeah,
Bridges, or they could lose him, but they cannot lose. They can't lose Ananobi. They have no chance without
yeah,
to beat the
yeah.
top teams. I'm not talking about
Yeah, because
playoff teams.
there's no defense, and not
Right.
only that, Towns was hobbling around in that
Yeah.
game. Even Hart was questionable with knee injury. And I'm like, yeah, you can't play the Celtics with half of your starters. I mean,
Right.
Brunson did what he could, scored 36 points. They actually went small in the third quarter of that game, and they got within 3. But then, how much can you do with Deuce out there in a small lineup? They're going to crush you after that. And how are you going
Yeah.
to defend the 3 against these guys? So,
Yeah,
like,
they're in big trouble against a top team. They have to
yeah,
have their full. Let's face it, they have to have everybody. Yeah, so Robinson, now that's mid-February almost, still
yeah.
nothing on him yet.
They did nothing at the trade deadline,
Yeah,
so
they did right. So they're hoping he's going to be the addition. So at least he's coming back. He will be back for the playoffs. He'll be around. How effective he will be, we have no idea. Anything else around the league?
no,
I
no,
haven't looked in the standings in a while.
yeah,
So
not. I mean, it's like I said, it really hasn't changed because there really hasn't been that many games this week. I don't know why it was pretty light schedule
Super
for
Bowl
games.
related, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
So the Cavs
So
are still having a great season, 43 and 10, and the Thunder 43 and 9.
yeah,
The Lakers are back. I tell you, the West is looking tough, John. It's definitely tough. The Mavs are eighth right now, so that's a battle. Um, I'm just taking a quick glimpse. All right. Well, we know the other winter sport, the one that's left, is not playing at all because the NHL, as I always like to joke, on an annual basis, when there's no other sports going on, they decide to always have a hiatus, a bye week. But this year, it's something a little more interesting, at least. It's the four country battle, whatever they're calling it. Now, the kind of the
I think it's Four Nations they
foreign
call it.
nations, right? That is correct, correct. And unfortunately, Czechoslovakia and Russia are not represented. So a lot of really good top players are not in this tournament because they happen to be from those countries. Now, Finland was the benefactor of that. So Finland does produce a good amount of players. Sweden's always been tough too, but you would think that it will come down to US and Canada. I'm mixed on this, John. I can't get that into it. As of course, being an Optimum customer, trying to get to see the Rangers, which actually I have a quick story, John. I got a quick story there. You got one too?
No,
Well,
no,
I'm
I
gonna
was going to ask you about your situation with the Gotham Sports.
Well, right now there's no reason to get it, right? Because the Rangers aren't playing, right?
Right.
So I can miss the Knicks. And I just saw the Knicks. I just saw the Celtics. I watched a good amount of the game. So I could do with, to be honest with you, John, I'll be there for the playoffs for the Knicks, and those games will be on. When the Rangers come back, that's when I'm going to make my decision. So I have not
Mm,
got the Gotham. I did get the new Optimum box that you can now stream other stations via your cable service as opposed to having a smart TV. So that yes, that did start, but I didn't get it. But the what was that? My God, now I've lost the train of thought of what was I going to tell the story about? With there was um, I guess it was. I have to think about it. We already talked about everybody out there should make sure they're calling their cable company so they can get a refund. And I know we talked about that a couple weeks ago.
yeah.
So yeah, maybe that what I was thinking, John. Maybe will pop back into my head. I apologize there.
Okay.
Um, there you go. It's tough, when you do stuff for fun like we do this show, and as we, especially for our newer people who are watching, is that John and we put this show together literally 5 minutes before we talk, and it's really just us talking about sports, and we don't rehearse. And sometimes we screw up because of that, but that's the fun of it, right? We're not sitting around like deciding what to talk about. It really is off the top of our heads. And
Yeah.
sometimes when that happens, right, John, you kind of just lose train of thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it will pop back in eventually. But in the interim, I guess it is now, since Pete Alonso is now a Met, things are kind of slowing down, but I know that John always has something for the fans with baseball with Bouk.
Yeah. Well, in baseball, so spring training is starting in several days for some teams. The Mets, the entire team will be in by next week. They've been interviewing Mendoza, uh, Francisco Alvarez. I have to give him credit. The kid has improved his English. Was raving that the Mets have the best lineup in baseball, which, you know, if he has a good year, it is a pretty, and if McNeil gets back to what he's capable of doing, it is a pretty awesome lineup when you look at it. I mean, it's a solid, solid lineup from.
Actually, hey, give us a preview of the Mets lineup that you think is gonna what Mendoza's gonna do. Not say what you would do. What do you think Mendoza's gonna
I think that he's going to have, of course, Lindor batting first. Uh, there's a question about who's going to be behind it. Is it going to be Vientos or Soto? Is the question. So I'm going to say that he's going to put Soto behind him.
do? Okay.
Third, they're talking about Pete being there, Alonso, then having Nimmo. I mean, I keep seeing this Nimmo batting fourth, and I'm like, I don't know about that one.
Hmm.
Maybe you put Vientos batting fourth, but let's say Nimmo for now.
Okay.
Yeah, Vientos.
Fifth. Okay.
Maybe you put McNeil sixth, or I would put Alvarez. I want Alvarez higher in the lineup. So Alvarez, McNeil. What am I missing here? We got DH. Wow. So you could have actually Marte could be there, and then you have Siri or Taylor. That's not a bad lineup. I
So
mean,
that's
that's
what. Okay, so you're talking center field.
could be
You're talking
Taylor
about.
or Siri.
Is that what they're looking at center field?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
and then
They'll be,
Nimmo's
and that'll
playing
be the
left.
ninth. That'll be the ninth place hitter.
They're going to have to go with defense out there, but they're both good defensive players, right? Aren't
They
they
are.
both?
They are.
All right.
So the
So
lineup, you could say Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, Vientos, Alvarez, McNeil, Marte, and either Siri or Taylor. It's not a bad lineup at all.
and then Winker's probably getting those at bats when Marte's not because
That's
if
right. That's
all
right.
right,
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
and then
Pretty
the
solid.
and the rotation as of today, we got obviously Manaya. Who else we got?
Yeah, you got Senga,
Sanger.
Manaya,
All right,
Peterson,
all right. That's three guaranteed, pretty much.
Holmes,
Holmes, yeah, you got to guarantee him as a
right?
fourth. Yeah, no, you're right.
Montas,
Yeah, Montas is the fifth. All right, that's
and
there.
then
Who's the extras?
and well, no, you have McGill
Right, right.
backing him up.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you have this guy
That's their
Black.
five, though.
You got Blackburn. I mean, you have a lot of
Right.
decent
Well,
pitchers.
isn't Blackburn like going to be like delayed in spring training? I thought I read that. Like
Yeah,
he's not.
yeah,
He might
he
not be
is.
ready.
He is. He
But
still has
as we joke, John, we will talk about how many pitchers we think the Mets will have this year. So, folks, if you think that you need 8, 9 potential starters on day one that you have lined up that are going to be your starters, it's just the days of being like, oh, I got 5, I'm good. That's over. And your bullpen, you need obviously 8 guys, and that's going to be a rotation of guys, as we joked. People just what I'm talking about is that the Mets had 37 different pitchers in a game last year. Now, of course, there were a couple that pitched one game, but still, it's really amazing to think that how many pitchers are in, and this is something throughout the whole league now with the new baseball, and that's that's it, John. That's the reality of the game, and
they use
it's not changing.
it's
So
not
what about
changing.
rule changes? A little anything wacky? Did they do anything going into the
No,
no?
no, no. They haven't really tweaked anything.
So it's pretty much as is.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not too many drastic things to even speak about. But one thing that came up today that again annoyed me and still annoys me. This guy Ipai Muzuhara, who was a translator for Otani and his bet taker, as far as I'm concerned, has been sentenced to 57 months in jail. That's all he got was 57 months in jail. And he has to, I don't know how this is going to happen. And he's been ordered to pay back to Otani $17 million. Yeah, just take it as a loss, Otani, because the guy lost. Listen, you lost your bets on the games, even though MLB will not admit that you made any bets. It just annoyed me to see that because I'm saying to myself, all right, this guy's taking a hit for him. There's making believe he's going to pay back this money, and that Otani never ever bet on any games, never in his life. They're using the word never. Come on, man. This is stupidity.
All right. Well,
Two other
yes.
signings that you can't believe these guys are still in baseball. I'm going to give you a name, and I don't even think you would know that he's still in baseball. Was Jason Hayward
Oh yeah, of
that
course. Yeah.
signed by the San Diego Padres after last year, and I one of the most absurd signings by the Dodgers paid him $9 million. What did he hit last year? 212.
Right.
212.
We talked about it
The
last
guy
year.
was washed up 10 years ago. He's still in baseball. And Kenley Jansen, he's 37 years old. The Angels signed him as to be their closer, 1 year, $10 million. So these guys are getting their contracts. I can't believe it. They're out there. They're still paying him.
Well, I think Jansen, I can believe. I can
He's
believe
not
that.
bad. The Mets tried to get him, but they thought they were going to get him for like $2 million. The
Right. Right.
Angels
Well,
just
yeah.
are the kings of overpaying probably the worst players that never produce. I mean, the Anthony Rendon signing has to be maybe one of the worst in the history of baseball. The guy even admits that he doesn't like to play baseball. Can you believe this? You signed a guy with what, 30 million a year, and he's saying last year, yeah, it's a job. I don't really enjoy playing baseball. Imagine you're the Angels. Do you hear that crap?
Couldn't happen to a dumber franchise. Hopefully Mike Trout can actually play this year. God, I hope he's healthy coming into the season at least. My God, that guy, I don't know how many years in a row now has he been out for,
Yeah,
major
yeah,
part of the season, right?
yeah. He keeps getting hurt. Keeps getting hurt. But
Exactly.
really, other than that, the Yankees. Still, you hear rumors of them trying to get a third baseman, looking at Arenado. Listen. I will not. I cannot believe that Cashman is going to go with DJ LeMahieu at third base. There's no way. They have to move Chaz over to second base. That's his normal position. He tried, the kid. He tried
Right.
to play third base. Just put him back at second. You're okay at second. But you got to get someone for third base. And I don't see why they should not go for Arenado. Listen, the I think the Cardinals owe as their part, I think like 55 or 60 million for 3 years to him. Rockies are paying the rest. So if you get them to throw in, let's say, $15 million just to get him off their books, he's worth 15 million a year for 3 years. Why not? Guy's a Gold Glove third baseman, and in Yankee Stadium, he's going to be like Goldschmidt. I think he's going to do very well. So I don't know. It's been very quiet in Yankee land. They
Right.
really should get Arenado. Again,
But I'm sorry, and if you said it, I apologize. So they would have to acquire Arenado, right? They have
correct,
to trade for him.
correct. But
So
the
what about
Cardinals are
Bert? What
desperate.
is so is Bergman the only big name left? He's still out there, right?
Yeah,
Is he, or
yeah.
did he sign?
No, no, no. He's still out there.
And the
And
Yankees had no interest in him at all, or he had no interest in
no,
the Yankees?
because he wants a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
Bregman,
Okay. Bergman. Do I what I call him?
Berkman.
Bergman? Ah, you know what I meant.
But Bregman turned another Boris client turned down an offer, which I thought was very good by the Astros. That it was $26 million a year for 6 years. Why are you turning down that offer? So according to the reports, they actually threw on another 10 million on top of that. So they're offering him almost 27.5 million. He had an off year last year,
Right.
and he's a
Yeah, he's
small
older.
guy too. He's not a
He's
big
been
guy.
around. Right. Right.
So
Right.
the only I think the only team that he would do well with, because there's small parks, are Chicago and Boston, because Houston's a very small stadium. I mean, with that in left field, especially. So I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, Boris messed up Pete Alonso. Boy, he's really messing up Bregman. And they're trying to say that there are 4 teams after him. There's no 4 teams. They're dropping out. Listen, you're asking too much money for the guy. He should go back to the Astros if I were him. So, but anyway,
All right.
that's it for me on baseball.
All right. Well, yeah, it's now where the calendar is shifting. Football season is over. People, I mean, we've been riding high all through the football season, pushing out the content. We're still going to be slugging it out. You may miss us a week here and there going forward, just so you know in advance. So as always, we appreciate everybody showing up and checking out the show. So John, I guess we can't even throw any women's basketball in here at the end. No, nothing there. So
I don't know anything about what.
well, we talked about it last year, little college hoops, but we'll save that. So, yeah, who do you got to thank?
As always, thank you to our producer, Zach Zubulake, and to our loyal listeners and viewers. Keep the feedback coming. Also, thanks to our community partners, Ronald McDonald House, Kids in Seats, and the Jackie Robinson Foundation. See you next week.